Take a quick guess. If you had to estimate the age of racism, what would you say? 1,000 years? 5,000? Ever since the first human being looked at the second one and noticed they were different? Almost everyone answers the same thing. That's just human nature. It's always been around. It seems too obvious to be wrong, but it is. And when you find out the real age of racism, something uncomfortable happens. You realize it isn't some ancient inheritance of humanity, it's an invention. And every invention has an inventor, a date, and a reason. So come with me and let's take this apart, one piece at a time. Let's start where the intuition feels strongest, the ancient world. Because slavery is old, nobody doubts that. Egypt had slaves. Greece, the cradle of democracy and philosophy, ran on slave labor. Rome was an entire empire powered by people in chains. It looks like the ultimate proof that racism has always been with us, just changing outfits over the centuries. But this is where the first surprise lives. If you could walk down a street in Rome and point out who was a slave, you'd be wrong every single time. Because a Roman slave could be a blonde from Northern Europe, could be dark-skinned from the East, could be black from Africa, could be white from the peninsula itself. The color of your skin said nothing about your condition. You didn't become a slave because of your body. You became a slave because of your luck. Lost a war, you became a slave. Born into an indebted family, you became a slave. Captured by pirates, you became a slave. It was a matter of circumstance, not blood. And the detail that seals the whole thing is this: a slave in Rome could be freed, and once free, could become a citizen, with fully Roman children. There was no idea that this person carried in their body a permanent mark of inferiority that would pass down to their descendants forever. In other words, the ancient world had slavery on a massive scale, and even so, it had no racism. Two things we swear were born fused together, lived apart for centuries. And here we have to stop for a second and be precise, because the entire confusion comes from mixing up two things that are not the same. The first is xenophobia, the distrust, the fear, the contempt for whoever comes from outside, for whoever speaks differently, worships another god, has other customs. That, yes, is ancient, probably as old as language itself. Every people has, at some point, found their neighbor strange, barbaric, inferior. The second thing is racism, and it's far more specific. Racism is the idea that humanity is divided into fixed compartments called races, that these races form a ladder, with some naturally on top and others naturally at the bottom, and that your place on that ladder is engraved in your body, in your blood, permanent and hereditary. Notice the brutal difference. One thing is to say, I don't trust people from outside. Another, completely different thing is to say, nature manufactured superior and inferior human beings, and you can tell which is which just by looking. The first idea is as old as the world. The second is young, and you can trace almost the exact moment it was assembled. The first sign shows up around the 15th century, on the Iberian Peninsula, in Spain and Portugal. A new and strange concept starts circulating there, called purity of blood. It worked like this. Jews and Muslims who converted to Christianity should, in theory, be Christians like any other. After all, they changed their faith. But people began to say that wasn't enough, that they carried something impure in their blood, something conversion couldn't wash away, and that this something passed down to their children and grandchildren. Do you see what happened there? For the first time, a difference that used to be only about religion, something you could change, became a matter of blood, something you could not change no matter what. That was the hinge. The moment prejudice began to slide down from the head to the body, from what a person believes to what a person supposedly is on the inside. It still wasn't full racism, but it was the seed of it. And then the world cracks open. Ships cross oceans, Europe builds colonies on the other side of the Atlantic, and a business of never-before-seen proportions is born. Millions of Africans kidnapped and transported to work for free on plantations that generated absurd fortunes. Here is the engine of everything. It wasn't hatred that created this system. It was money. A lot of money. But there was a discomfort growing right in the middle of that machine. Because at that exact same time, in that same Europe, powerful new ideas were flourishing. That all men are born equal, that every human being has natural rights, that liberty is a supreme value. And here rises an impossible contradiction to hide. How do you write, with one hand, that all men are equal and free by nature, while, with the other, you chain up millions of people and sell their children? How does a society live with that crack without going insane? The way out was as ingenious as it was perverse. If you can't deny that all men are equal, you do something else. You decide that those people aren't quite men in the same sense. You invent the idea that they belong to a separate category of nature, a different race, made by natural design to obey and to serve. There, the contradiction vanishes. You can keep defending equality and liberty because, in your new system, that group over there doesn't even enter the count of full humanity. Racism is born right here, and notice the order of things, because it's the heart of everything. The exploitation came first, the profit came first, colonial slavery came first. The idea of superior and inferior races came afterward, made to order, as a tailored justification for a crime that was already turning a profit. Racism was not the cause of modern slavery, it was its alibi. And a well-built alibi needs to look like the truth. That's when the idea got its most powerful disguise, the lab coat of science. In the centuries that followed, learned men, respected, admired, took that excuse and dressed it up as natural fact. In 1758, one of the greatest scientists of the era, the same man who created the system biology still uses today to name every species, divided humanity into varieties, and, beside each one, wrote personality descriptions, stating which were hardworking and which were lazy, which were noble and which were inferior. It wasn't observation, it was the prejudice of the age written in laboratory handwriting. Others came after, measuring skulls, building tables, ranking peoples on a ladder, and nailing to the very top, what a surprise, exactly the European who was doing the measuring. They gave numbers, graphs, and the appearance of neutrality to a lie that served a very clear purpose. From that point on, racism was no longer an opinion. It was presented as nature, as science, as destiny. But here comes the final proof that all of this is an invention, and it's a proof you can test today. If race were a natural fact, a truth of the body, it would be the same all over the world, like height or the number of fingers. Except it isn't. The very same person, with the same face, the same skin, the same blood, can be classified as black in one country and as white or mixed in another, depending only on the rules that particular society invented. In the United States, for a long time, the rule held that a single drop of African blood already made you black. In Brazil, that same person could be seen in a dozen different ways. Well, if nature had truly created races, it wouldn't change its mind when you cross a border. What changes from country to country isn't people's bodies. It's the ruler invented to measure those bodies. And that's only possible because the ruler was never natural. It was always human. So we come back to the question from the beginning, and now the answer carries weight. Did racism always exist? No. Fear of the different is as old as the species. That much is true. But racism, that specific architecture of races and tiers, engraved in the blood and sold as a law of nature, is only a few centuries old. It has an address, a date, a reason, and owners. And that's exactly why this discovery matters so much, far beyond mere curiosity. Because what we believe to be eternal seems impossible to change. It's always been this way, is the sentence that locks the door and throws away the key. But if racism was invented by specific people at a specific moment to justify a specific profit, then it isn't destiny, it isn't nature, it isn't fate. It is a human work. And everything the hand of man once built, the hand of man is capable of taking apart. You started this video thinking you were looking at something as old as time. In reality, you were looking at a recent invention that learned the most dangerous trick of all, disguising itself as "it's always been this way." And maybe that's the lesson that stays with us. The ideas that most dominate the world tend to be exactly the ones we've forgotten someone, one day, had to invent.